Today is Monday, January 23rd, 2023, and we're finishing up Ecclesiastes. There's just a few more chapters. And chapter 9 has a big theme of, and it's kind of like the conclusion, that the unfortunate for the author conclusion of his life's quest to find the meaning of life and how the world works. He finally comes to the realization that all things come alike to all. That it doesn't matter what you do in life or who you are, how you're born, any of that stuff, that life happens to us all. And the reason that this is so striking is because this is not how they thought at the time. And the people in general at that time, they had this belief that, oh, if you have a lot of stuff in life, if you're rich and powerful in life, God must love you and you must be a good person. And they also look down on the poor like that. Oh, you're poor? God must hate you and you must be a terrible person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be poor. And it's one of those things that I feel like good people, maybe it's like a God's children thing, know that that can't possibly be right. That just because you're born in a poor situation, that doesn't mean anything about the individual. And it really is just a difference in time. That back then, magic was very thick in the ether. Everybody knew that God existed. There were also pagans that were into the lowercase g gods and goddesses, but it was just a completely different time where if anything happened, they would assign great importance to it, like it must have happened that way because of God directly intervening. That was kind of their opinion. And where I think that it's partially right, yeah, nothing in this world happens without God allowing it to happen. Nothing is made here without God making it. But we do have free will, and it does happen that a lot of what we interpret as good things happen to evil people, and what we interpret as bad things seems to happen to good people here. And the problem of evil is something, a philosophical problem that we all deal with. Why does bad happen to good people? Yeah, it's part of the way that this place is. I don't have an answer to why. I think it has something to do with free will. I don't know that free will would be possible if good things could never happen to bad people and bad things could never happen to good people. I don't think that that's physically possible with the way that God made this place. I figure that there's good reasons for the way that God made this place the way that he did. Anyways, we could go to the word of God, the words of Jesus. Matthew chapter 5 verse 35 tells us that, yeah, this is the way that it is. So Matthew chapter 5 verse 35, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven, for he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth forth rain on the wise, or on the just and the unjust. Sorry, paraphrasing a little bit there towards the end. But you get the message that good happens to everybody and evil happens to everybody, and life is something that just happens to everybody, and nobody's born into a special position here on earth besides Jesus. Jesus is the Messiah. He's the one who is glorified, and all of us are on. I've just always felt this. I've always known, hey, just because somebody's famous and on TV, that doesn't mean anything. They're still a person. They're still in the same league as any of us. I've always felt that, and that, I think, comes into this too. All things come alike to all. Similar to that means nobody's special. Nobody should think that they're special. And special as in above other people because of circumstance or whatever. Okay, so it's interesting that in chapter 9 Ecclesiastes, the author calls that evil. The author calls it a great evil that all things come alike to all. The author of Ecclesiastes, they don't want it to be like that. They want good stuff to happen to good people and evil stuff to happen to evil people. Of course that's what we want. Of course that sounds like justice to us, but that's just not the way that the world works. And I trust God to have made this place perfectly. And I don't think, I think that a lot of times people, they take a really arrogant position where it's like they think that they know better. Just because something seems odd to them, they think that they know better. Whereas, hey, God is so much bigger than us that it's hard to reason it sometimes. But why do you think that you should even be able to reason like God? You're just a mortal, and right now you're just in your weak meat suit. So I don't know why you think that you would be able to think like God. Okay, more indication that the author of Ecclesiastes is getting into some mental strife here is when he kind of, in my opinion, he contradicts himself when he talks about how even a live dog is better than a dead lion. Because it's like, weren't you just spending a lot of chapters talking about how it's better to be dead than alive? And I see where he's coming at with this. It has to do with the fact that when you're dead, you're dead. And that when you're dead, there's no chance at any other life experiences. You can't even have the chance of having a good experience or being merry if you're dead. So it's better to be alive and something wretched like a dog than to be a dead something majestic like a lion. Okay, I get that, but it kind of contradicts what he's been talking about before this. So that's why I think here he's just getting at the idea of when you're dead, you're dead, and there's no more that you can do to get any pleasure. Or see, the author of Ecclesiastes doesn't really talk about the afterlife, and that's where I think this comes into what a commenter said and what I talked about in the last video. It seems like Ecclesiastes has some connection to, I believe, the Sadducees. I think that's the group of people that had a strong connection. At least this is one theory. And it could come into this resurrection idea that there were groups of people that didn't believe in resurrection. And it's possible that the author of Ecclesiastes felt that way or believed that there wasn't a resurrection, because they very much are pressing this idea of when you're dead, you're dead. I think that the author's also contrasting a lot of burial rituals of the time where people would fill their chambers with a bunch of stuff. And Ecclesiastes is saying, what's the point of that? It's not, you can't bring that with you when you're dead. You're dead. You can't, there's no more drinking or being merry when you're dead. So I think that you can believe that, though, and still believe in the resurrection, because that's me personally. I believe that. Yeah, when you're dead, you're dead, and you can't fix anything in your life either when you're dead. When you're dead, it's set in stone at that point, whether you're saved or not saved. And yeah, of course, also you can't have any good experiences or bad experiences at that point. So, I don't know. I can agree with both the statement of it's better to be dead than alive, but then also on the other hand, people that are dead can't have any more experiences. So that is like a plus side of being alive, that you can still have good experiences. Okay, what else? Chapter 9, verse 11 was kind of interesting. I'm just going to read it. It just kind of summarizes chapter 9 nicely. So this is Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. And yeah, I think it's kind of a blessing. I think it's, who would want a world that was so fixed? And I mean, it's, God has always known since the beginning everything that's ever going to happen, even though we have free will, which is amazing, that to think that God has the power to unite those two things, to be able to know everything that's going to happen, but then also to give everybody free will, is kind of a mind-blowing thing. But it's real. And I just think that, yeah, that whole idea of everybody's born on earth in different circumstances, but life happens to everybody. I think that's only fair for salvation. Why? It wouldn't be unfair where you're born in a situation that makes it easier to be saved. That's why Jesus is amazing and makes sense to me as salvation, because it's available to everybody. And that I know in my heart that that's the way that God is, that God wants to give salvation to everybody. and that God isn't going to make it so much harder for some individual over here to be saved versus somebody who's just born into it. Okay, at the very end of chapter 9 is a really interesting story. It's like I always forget about the story until I read it again. The story of a small town that's being besieged, and this old wise man comes out of the shadows and tells them how to stop the siege, how to survive the siege, and they win against all odds. This small town is saved from being sieged by this greater enemy. And then the point of the story is that nobody even remembers who the old man is. People are just happy to be saved. Oh, thank goodness we got saved, and they instantly forget about the guy who just saved them all. I just like that story. I think it's really true to life. I read something like that and I'm like, yeah, that happened. That happened many, many times. Okay, so that's it for chapter 9. I'm just going to read chapter 10 and that'll be it. Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savour. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honour. A wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart at his left. Yea, also, when he that is a fool walketh by the way, his wisdom faileth him, and he saith to every one that he is a fool. If the spirit of the ruler rise up against thee, leave not thy place, for yielding pacifieth great offences. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, as an error which proceedeth from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place. I have seen servants upon horses, and princes walking as servants upon the earth. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it, and whoso breaketh an edge, a serpent shall bite him. Whoso removeth stones shall be hurt therewith, and he that cleaveth wood shall be endangered thereby. If the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength. But wisdom is profitable to direct. Surely the serpent will bite without enchantment, and a babbler is no better. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool will swallow up himself. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is mischievous madness. A fool also is full of words. A man cannot tell what shall be, and what shall be after him. Who can tell him? The labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them, because he knoweth not how to go to the city. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning! Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season, for strength, and not for drunkenness. By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands the house droppeth through. A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. Curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchamber, for a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. Hope you enjoyed the video. God bless everyone.